My name is Serafina Vance. I am 34 years old. And until 3 hours ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I thought I knew my place in this family. I thought the word adopted stopped mattering after 28 years. I thought love was louder than blood. I was wrong about everything. Let me tell you what happened at the Harrington family reunion. Let me tell you about the moment my sister-in-law stood up in front of 60 people and called my adoption a mistake. Let me tell you about the laughter, the pointing, the way my mother looked at the floor instead of me. And then let me tell you about the DNA results. Before I tell you what happened next, take a moment to like and subscribe to this channel. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong somewhere you called home? Now, let's begin. The Harrington family reunion happens every year on the third weekend of August. This was my 20th one. I was adopted when I was 6 years old. The Harringtons took me in after my biological parents, well, after they couldn't take care of me anymore. I don't remember much about that time. Just fragments. A blue dress. A car seat. The smell of coffee in a stranger's kitchen. Eleanor and William Harrington gave me a home. They gave me their last name. They gave me a bedroom with yellow wallpaper and a stuffed rabbit that I still have somewhere in a storage box. But they never gave me the feeling of truly belonging. I noticed it when I was 8. My sister, their biological daughter, Victoria, would get piano lessons. I would get hand-me-down books. Victoria would get birthday parties with bounce houses and 30 classmates. I would get a cake from the grocery store and a quiet dinner. I told myself it was fine. I told myself they loved me the only way they knew how. And maybe they did. Maybe love and favoritism can exist in the same house. But children notice everything. We pretend not to. But we notice. By the time I was 14, I understood what I was. I was the charity case. The good deed. The story Eleanor told at dinner parties to prove how generous the Harringtons were. She was abandoned, Eleanor would say, lowering her voice like it was a tragedy she was proud to have rescued. We couldn't just leave her there. And everyone would nod. Everyone would call her a saint. And I would sit in the next room, pretending I couldn't hear. I decided early that I would never ask for more than they offered. I would never complain. I would never demand to be treated equally. I would be grateful. Quiet. Invisible. That strategy worked for 28 years. Until the reunion. The reunion was at my parents' house this year. The same house I grew up in. The yellow wallpaper was gone now. The stuffed rabbit was in storage. But the feeling of standing on the outside looking in? That was exactly the same. I arrived alone. My husband, Daniel, was working a double shift at the hospital, so it was just me. That was mistake number 1, showing up without armor. Mistake number 2 was wearing the blue dress. The one Victoria said made me look like I was trying too hard. I didn't know she'd said that until later. My mother kissed my cheek. "So glad you could make it," she said. The same words she said every year. Not, "I missed you." Not, "It's good to see you." Just "so glad you could make it," like I was a guest. Like I'd RSVP'd to someone else's party. My father was grilling hamburgers. He nodded at me from across the lawn and went back to flipping patties. That was the most affection I'd received from him all night. And then there was Victoria. Victoria is 36. She has perfect hair, perfect teeth, and a perfect ability to make me feel like dirt under her designer shoes. We look nothing alike. She got the Harrington blue eyes and the Harrington cheekbones. I got whatever genes my biological parents left behind. She's never called me her sister. Not once in 28 years. I'm Eleanor's adopted daughter, or the girl we took in, or her personal favorite, our little charity project. But that night, she outdid herself. Dinner was awkward, but uneventful for the first 30 minutes. People passed the potatoes. Someone told a story about a vacation to Cape Cod. My uncle fell asleep in his chair, and everyone laughed. Then Victoria finished her 3rd glass of wine. It started small. "So, Serafina," she said, loud enough for half the table to hear. "Still working at that little marketing firm?" Little. That was the first dagger. Still enjoying it, she continued before I could answer. "I mean, I could have gotten you a job at my company years ago. More money. Better benefits. But you never asked." I smiled. I like my job, Victoria. She laughed. Of course you do. You've always been so easy to please. I should have left then. I should have made an excuse, a headache, an early morning, anything. But I stayed. Because leaving would have meant admitting that her words could hurt me. And I had spent 28 years pretending they couldn't. The conversation moved on. Or so I thought. Then dessert came. And everything fell apart. My son asked me something interesting the other day, Victoria announced, holding her wine glass like a microphone. He asked why Aunt Serafina doesn't look like the rest of us. Laughter around the table. Nervous. Uncomfortable. I told him it's because Aunt Serafina isn't really a Harrington, Victoria continued. She's adopted. You know, from those people. Those people. That's what she called my biological family. Those people. My mother cleared her throat. Victoria, maybe we should. Oh, come on, Mom, Victoria interrupted. It's not a secret. Everyone knows. She's not really family. She's just someone we helped. The word helped landed like a slap. I opened my mouth to speak. To defend myself. To say something, anything, that would prove I belong there. But before I could form the words, Victoria delivered the knockout blow. She looked directly at me. Her eyes were glassy from the wine, but her voice was sharp as glass. You know what the worst part is, she said. When Mom and Dad told me they were adopting you, I cried for a week. Because I knew. I knew you'd never really be one of us. I told them it was a mistake. Silence. The adoption was a mistake, she repeated, louder now. You were a mistake. And we've all been pretending otherwise for 28 years. No one defended me. Not my mother, who stared at her plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Not my father, who suddenly became very interested in the ice melting in his glass. Not my aunts or uncles or cousins, 60 people who had watched me grow up, who had celebrated my graduations and my wedding, who had called themselves my family. 60 people. 0 voices. My eyes filled with tears. I could feel them coming, hot, humiliated, angry tears. My throat closed up. My hands started shaking. I looked across the table at Victoria. She was smiling. She had won. She had finally said out loud what everyone had always thought. And that's when something strange happened. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. The heat in my chest didn't disappear, but it changed. It hardened. It turned from shame into something I had never felt before. Cold. Quiet. Dangerous. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the patio stones. Everyone turned to look at me. There's something you should all know, I said. My voice didn't wobble. I didn't cry. I just spoke. Something I found out 3 months ago. I walked to the far end of the backyard. Away from the string lights. Away from the laughter. Away from 60 people who had just watched my sister-in-law call me a mistake. I pulled out my phone. The contact was saved as Dr. Morrison DNA Lab. I had added that contact 3 months ago. I had stared at it every night since. Wondering. Hoping. Terrified. I pressed call. Dr. Morrison, a voice answered. It's Serafina Harrington. I mean, Serafina Vance. I'm sorry to call so late. No problem at all, he said. He sounded wide awake. Maybe he knew something was happening. Maybe he heard the change in my voice. I need you to come to the reunion, I said. Right now. Bring the results. A pause. Are you sure, Serafina? This is a big moment. You should have support. I looked back at the party. At Victoria laughing with someone now, already over her performance, already certain she had won. I have all the support I need, I said quietly. I just need the truth. 20 minutes, Dr. Morrison said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and walked back to the table. People were still pretending nothing had happened. Passing the pie. Pouring more wine. Victoria was telling a story about her son's soccer game, her voice loud and confident, the queen of a kingdom she thought was unshakable. I sat down. I folded my hands in my lap. And I waited. What was that about? My mother whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. You'll find out soon enough. She didn't ask again. 17 minutes passed. I counted every one. Victoria made 2 more comments about my job. My uncle asked if I'd lost weight. My father asked if Daniel was working again, like my husband's career as a trauma surgeon was somehow an inconvenience. I answered nothing. I just watched the driveway. And then headlights. Dr. Morrison was 62 years old. Gray hair. Kind eyes. He had been running DNA ancestry labs for 30 years. He had delivered life-changing news to hundreds of people. But he told me later that night, he had never seen a room go silent as fast as that backyard did when he walked through the gate. "Who the hell is that?" Victoria said. I stood up. "This is Dr. Morrison," I said. My voice carried across the entire yard. "He's a geneticist. 3 months ago, I asked him to run a DNA test. Not an ancestry test. A full genetic analysis, comparing my DNA to the Harrington family DNA. I wanted to know," I continued, "if the woman who called my adoption a mistake was right. If I really didn't belong. If I really was just a charity case who never fit in." Victoria's smirk was gone. Her face was pale. "Before I share the results," Dr. Morrison said, his voice calm and professional, "I want to explain what we found. Serafina provided a DNA sample. I cross-referenced it against the samples provided by Eleanor and William Harrington, with their permission, of course." My mother nodded. She had given her sample months ago, not knowing what I was looking for. "Here's what the science shows." He paused. The entire backyard held its breath. Serafina Vance is not biologically related to Eleanor or William Harrington. We already knew that she was adopted. But here's what we didn't know. Serafina's DNA shows a 99.97% match to a family that has been looking for her for 20 years. A family that never stopped searching. A family that is. He looked at me. I nodded. A family that is one of the wealthiest in this state. "My biological father," I said, stepping forward, "is not dead. He's not unknown. He's not some mystery I'll never solve. He's Jonathan Blackwood. The Jonathan Blackwood. The one whose face is on the business magazines. The one who owns the hospital where my husband works. The one who has been paying for my college education, my first car, and the down payment on my house, all through anonymous trusts, because he wasn't allowed to contact me until I turned 30. Silence. Complete. Utter. Silence. I turned to Victoria. Her face was the color of the white tablecloth. "You called me a mistake," I said quietly. "You told everyone I didn't belong. You made me feel like garbage at every family gathering for 28 years. But here's the truth, Victoria. The adoption wasn't a mistake. Your parents taking me in wasn't charity. It was a kindness that I will always be grateful for. But the real mistake, the real tragedy, is that you spent your entire life hating someone who never once wanted to compete with you." I looked around the table. At my mother, who was crying. At my father, who couldn't meet my eyes. At the 60 people who had watched me burn and done nothing. "As of this morning," I said, "I am the majority shareholder of Harrington Family Holdings. Jonathan Blackwood bought out the company's debt 2 years ago. He transferred ownership to me last week. I own everything your father built. Everything you thought would be yours." Victoria stood up. Her chair fell backward. "You're lying," she whispered. "This is a lie. You're making this up." "Am I?" I motioned to Dr. Morrison. He handed me the envelope. "Read it yourself. The DNA results. The transfer of ownership. The legal documents signed and notarized. It's all there." She grabbed the papers. Her hands were shaking. And as she read, as the truth settled into her bones, something changed in her face. The arrogance crumbled. The smirk disappeared. And behind her eyes, behind the perfect hair and the designer clothes and the 28 years of cruelty, I saw fear. Real fear. "Please," she said. Her voice cracked. "Please, Serafina. I didn't mean it. I was drunk. I didn't mean any of it." I looked at her. This woman who had tormented me since childhood. Who had called me a mistake in front of our entire family. Who had made sure I never forgot that I was different. "Victoria," I said gently, "you meant every word. And we both know it. That was 3 hours ago. The backyard is empty now. The string lights are still on, no one remembered to turn them off. Victoria and her family left in a hurry. My mother is inside, crying in the kitchen. My father is sitting in his armchair, staring at the wall. Dr. Morrison stayed for an hour, answering questions, explaining the science. Then he shook my hand and drove away. And now I'm sitting here, alone, in the dark, holding an envelope that changed everything. I don't feel victorious. I thought I would. I thought exposing Victoria, watching her beg, would feel like justice. And maybe it is. Maybe she deserved to know what it feels like to be powerless. But mostly, I just feel tired. 28 years of pretending to be less than I am. 28 years of shrinking myself to fit into a family that never fully opened its arms. 28 years of being called the adopted one like it was a diagnosis instead of a story of survival. My biological father, Jonathan, called me an hour ago. "I'm proud of you," he said. "And I'm sorry it took this long. I'm sorry I wasn't there." I told him it wasn't his fault. He was young when I was born. His family pressured him into giving me up. He'd spent 3 decades making up for it, quietly, anonymously, faithfully. "I want to meet you," he said. "For real. Not through lawyers and trusts. I want to know my daughter." I told him yes. Tomorrow, I'm driving to his house. He lives 2 hours from here. He has a wife and 2 children, my half-siblings, who have been asking about me for years. I'm scared. I'm hopeful. I'm something I haven't felt in a very long time. I'm curious. Victoria called me before I started recording this. For times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, crying, apologizing, begging me to forget what she said. "Please," she said in the last one. "Please don't take everything. We're family. We're supposed to forgive each other." Family. She used that word now. After 28 years of refusing to say it. I saved the voicemail. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I want to remember what it sounds like when someone who thought they had all the power suddenly realizes they have none. I'm not going to destroy the Harringtons. I'm not going to kick them out of their house or ruin their lives. That's not who I am. But I'm not going to pretend anymore either. I'm not a mistake. I was never a mistake. I was a child who needed a home, and I found one. And even though that home wasn't perfect, even though it hurt me in ways I'm still discovering, it made me who I am. Strong. Resilient. Unbreakable. Victoria wanted to know the worst part. She wanted to know what I was thinking when she called me garbage in front of everyone. Here's the truth. I was thinking about my biological father. About the DNA results sitting in his office. About the phone call I was about to make. Because I knew in that moment, with her finger pointed at my face and her wine glass in her hand, that she had no idea who she was talking to. She called me a mistake. But I've always known the truth. I was never the mistake. They called me adopted. They called me different. They called me a mistake. But they never knew who I really was.